Hey everybody, it's Joe from MiddleGround Mic. The explosives under a van in Utah. Fiery showdown between Schiff and FBI Director Kash Patel and multiple members in the Senate. When a Federal Reserve decision this week that could really shift the economy in a time when it may need it most to keep it on solid footing. Welcome back to the MiddleGround Mic. I'm Joe, and today we're cutting through the noise. We're going to connect these three major stories because they all come back to one thing: trust in America's institutions, whether it's holding up or breaking apart. Do some of them need to be reformed? I would think that they do. But let's dig into the Schiff versus Kash Patel. At the Senate hearing, both of them were going back and forth. Why Giselle and Maxwell was quietly moved to a prison in Texas, and why certain Epstein files have been sealed still. And Patel have both accused each other of playing politics and hiding information, right? But Patel has shot back, calling Schiff a political buffoon, a coward, and the biggest fraud to ever sit in the Senate. While I get where his heart is coming from, this frustration is coming from, I wish the senator and Kash Patel would use a little bit more civility. All this does is drive division and is not going to get anything across. I get where both are coming from, right? Schiff has done some questionable things, no doubt. The clash, it wasn't just about Epstein, though. It was about, was the FBI being run properly, was being run independently, or as a political arm, right? Schiff asked Kash Patel, do you think the American people are stupid? No, he doesn't think they're stupid. But Patel did defend himself, saying the personnel changes and decisions were more about misconduct and not politics. He also tied it back to the FBI's handling of Charlie Kirk's murder investigation, claiming speed and fairness, but critics aren't buying it. There was a lot of information that came out from the government in the immediate aftermath of this that did not turn out to be accurate. They kind of do get a valid point of why they're criticizing how certain things were handled by the FBI. This exchange shows, what's at stake. Who do Americans trust when even their top law enforcement officials are trading insults instead of information? You guys are accountable to the American people, not your egos and not your own personal opinions. Do the right thing. Do the right thing by Charlie Kirk. Do the right thing by the legislative representative in Minnesota that was gunned down along with her husband. But we need to be doing the right thing by them, not worrying about scoring political points. Scoring political points in these kind of situations is only detrimental to the American people. We need to do better. Our government needs to do better. The left and the right need to do better on these things, because this matters too much to the American people and their ability to walk out of their house and trust that things are going to go okay on their way to work. And it's up to our leaders in Washington to make sure that happens. Let's kind of move on a little bit, talk about the Utah news, van device, right? So, while Congress was busy trading barbs, something even more dangerous has been happening, right? In Utah, the FBI arrested two men that had incendiary devices found under a Fox affiliate news van. They found narcotics, electronics tied to other potential crimes inside of their home. Neighbors reported anti-Trump stuff outside the home, whether that was political or personal or just cover. The fact remains, the media was the target. It just seems to be the theme that of a lot of these situations lately, the anti-Trump thing seems to be on there. Good chances are they probably don't like the president, but there could be just some people using it as a cover to do what they want to do, and nobody thinks anything of it. But we shouldn't be tackling journalists. It's petty. There's a lot of things you can go after people for in this country, but journalists physically getting attacked, so blown up, murdered. I don't care if they're a left-wing journalist. I don't care if it was AOC. I don't care if it was Bernie Sanders. I don't care if it was, Benjamin. Nobody deserves to be murdered. That's just not right. And opinions about who they are as an individual, none of them have murdered anybody as individuals. So don't say, oh, their opinion. No, get out of here with that. And if you're going to say that makes me a righty or a lefty, get out. It's insane, right? Think about it. Journalists covering the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's assassination, and someone tries to blow up their vehicle. It's a chilling reminder that political violence doesn't just go after politicians. It goes after the press and the people delivering information and the average citizen like you. Imagine if you have a neighbor, or maybe not your neighbor, right? But there was someone that you knew that you didn't get along with. Politics have divided you. These are the kind of situations that drive those people into your home, or they do crazy things. And those things might not be recorded as political violence. We don't know. But these kind of things, and while each side wants to talk about rhetoric, at some point, yeah, the rhetoric from both sides. I mean, to be fair, I've seen a lot more rhetoric on the left lately than the right, but the right has had its fair share too. But a lot of stuff lately, like calling anybody who's a MAGA supporter a Nazi and a fascist. Like, really go back and look at your history of World War II and things of that nature, and I'm pretty sure doesn't fit the bill. We've got to do better. We've got to focus on solutions and not satisfying our own need to gotcha moments. Like, it just seems, and that is probably like one of my worst pet peeves, gotcha moments. I hate it in the workplace. I hate it with everything. Just talk about it. Be blunt. Be honest. Gotcha moments are so stupid. They are stupid. What do you get out of a gotcha moment? For what? Why don't you just bring up the issues and talk about them? Stop worrying about gotcha moments. Stop worrying about being able to pound on your chest that you did this or you did that to prove a point. Like, get out of here, man. That's not helping the American people and the voters. If you guys are going for this, what are you thinking? These people, you're going for this because they're baiting you into it, first. Second, the people that are baiting you into it, what have they done to make your life better? Because I don't know if you look at economic news, it's not saying it. I mean, I haven't really seen too much of it personally. Things seem to be the same, but the problems that you're having in your life, what are those gotcha moments that politicians are doing that leads to nothing but arguments between them and whoever they're talking to? What is it doing for you? Because as far as I can see, it's not doing a whole lot for any of us. Stop with the gotcha moments, focus on solutions, focus on coming together, because it's America first, not your personal opinions. That's not a Republican view. That should be an American view. Those people are responsible to us. They're supposed to be here to serve us, not us have to tell them to not act like children. We have to do better as a country. It's very sad that we're even going down this road. It's very sad that we even have to have this conversation. That's the worst part, is the fact that we even have to have this conversation here. The fact that we even have to have that conversation is an insult to everybody that lives in this country. We're over here in Michigan, and we're arguing about how we fund the schools, even though the budget's pretty similar for the K through 12s. There's still like that little bit is causing budget stalemates, and it's how that money works. So the money's there for the most part, a little bit of a difference, but we can't get something done and kids are at risk. These are our children. Like, no matter if you're on the left or you're on the right, these things impact your children. And if you want to talk about honoring Charlie Kirk would have said, we have to do what's right for our kids. I know he probably would have took the conservative stance on some of these issues, which is fine because that's who he was, but we have to do better by our kids. There's a lot of kids out there that need certain things, especially in impoverished areas, lower income areas. Like, and this back and forth, this little bickering to prove a point, so you can go on whatever platform or whatever news station you want and go, look at me. Stop with that. Be better. Be better Lansing, be better Washington, just be better. And kind of getting to another one that's going to really hit us this week. While Washington is fighting, Utah seems to be smoldering, for lack of a better phrase. The Fed meets this week on the 16th and 17th, which is today and tomorrow. The Federal Reserve is expected to announce its first rate cut of the year, a 25 basis point drop. If you don't know what that means, it's a 0.25% drop. And right now the markets really want clarity, but the Fed is under its own political storm. Trump allies, was just confirmed to the board. Lisa Cook is fighting off removal in court. We'll see where that one plays out, because technically what she was doing was possibly illegal, but I don't know, because as far as I'm aware, she has not been convicted. So in this country, she's supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. So if she has not been convicted, she should not be touched. But here's the bigger question, right? Can the Fed stay independent while under direct political pressure? Well, maybe there needs to be some court challenges to really establish what the courts view in this country as the line drawn in the sand by that, because obviously that line has not been drawn clear enough. I'm not even talking about what's in the bill or what's in this. No, I'm talking about we need to go to the court. We need to establish, boom, this is what it is. Because Lord knows Congress won't do it. Rate cuts mean cheaper borrowing, but also risk to more inflation, right? Because if you're already fighting inflation, you start pumping more into the economy, that drives up prices. Things that, especially in the current situation, the Fed's credibility depends on numbers, not just on numbers, but on trust. Remember, that money is based on the faith in the United States government, right? Economics is a social science, not just a numbers game. It is a social science. Don't believe me? Look it up. And it's the same trust we're losing in law enforcement and the press. Some people are losing that in law enforcement. I think a lot of the country on the left and the right, I'm not talking about the people in the press, I'm talking about the average American, they've already lost confidence in the press. I don't really even know how you could be a Republican and take most things at Fox News super serious, because some of it you're just sitting there like, and it's got to be a comedy show. I mean, no different than MSN. It's the same thing there, and some of these news networks, right? There's some good folks on there though. Some of them do seem to take their job seriously and try, but a lot of it is just more grasping for straws anymore and, trying to do that. These three stories aren't separate headlines. They're all connected threads to a lot of things that are going on. Explosives under news vans, political fireworks in Washington, even more so, and financial fireworks at the Fed, all pointing to one thing. Our institutions in this country are under siege. Now, here's the question. Do some of them deserve it? I believe so. Do all of them deserve it? No, I think some of them do serve a very valid purpose. I know there's a lot of people in this country that wants to get rid of the Fed. That's a whole nother debate. Some of these threats are coming from bombs, some from words, some from politics, but they all come back to whether people still believe in the system is working for them. Well, as far as I know, a lot of the average Americans I know don't believe that's been going on for a long time, or whether they're ready to take matters into their own hands. If you want to take matter into your own hands, vote for someone that truly believes the way you do. Stop with, I'm going for this party because, you got the R or the D next to your name, so you're automatically voting for them. Stop that. Get away from that. You really want real change? Start putting country before party. Start putting your neighbor before party. That is how we fix this. Stop putting Democrats and Republicans before yourself, your countrymen, and your own country. That is when they won't have a choice but to fix it to get your vote, because they're going to know, they want to know, people are going to, the politicians are going to know that you want to know what they've done. So stop putting party before country. I know a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, I don't do that." Look at the actions. Look at the actions and the words. They all sound like my party, my party, my party. And then America gets slipped in there somewhere. It's about party. It's not about country. And I'm not trying to bash any of them, but I mean, or anybody that views things a certain way, right? But it's just, it doesn't seem like, because if it was America first, there's a lot of Americans that are suffering from certain things that, our government could have took action on a long time ago. And it doesn't matter which party's in power, neither one of them do it. So, we'll go from there. And on that, but to me, this is why we need the middle ground mic, right? Why we need this show, to step outside of the echo chambers, have some honest dialogue that America needs right now. And not just America, to be fair, the world. Thanks for listening. I'm Joe. No left, no right, forward. And don't forget, get yourself a cup of middle ground coffee.